Now we start from the Middle East. U.S. President Donald Trump has reaffirmed that Hamas must disarm following the Gaza peace deal, emphasizing that they will either comply or face forceful disarmament. Let's listen in to what the U.S. President has said.
We have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes, you say
because
quickly.
Everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm or we will disarm them. Got it?
While President Trump has acknowledged that Hamas would play a limited role in the short-term security process during Gaza's rebuilding, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned of severe consequences if Hamas fails to disarm, outlining a two-state demilitarization plan. Israeli authorities have identified the bodies of hostage U.S. President Donald Trump has reaffirmed that Hamas must disarm following the Gaza peace deal, emphasizing that they will either comply or face forceful disarmament. Let's listen in to what U.S. President has said.
Told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes, you say
because
quickly.
Everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm or we will disarm them. Got it?
Now for this discussion, we're joined by Mohammad Khatibi. He's a Middle East expert, joins us live from Tehran. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Mr. Khatibi, how do President Trump's warning and the ongoing violence in Gaza reflect the challenges of implementing a peace process in the Israel-Palestinian conflict here? Mr. Khatibi, could you hear me? Now we move on and we stay on this topic. Israeli authorities have identified the bodies of hostages Eitan Levi, Tamir Nimrodi, and Uriel Baruch, whose remains were returned from Gaza overnight. The Abu Kabir Institute of Forensic Medicine has confirmed the identifications, while one additional body has returned from Gaza is still undergoing the identification. Demonstrators have gathered in Tel Aviv to celebrate the liberation of all living hostages and to demand the return of the remaining deceased hostages under the terms of the ceasefire. Meanwhile, families of released hostages have thanked the President Trump's administration and urged pressure on Hamas to release the remaining bodies. Let's listen into what they have said.
Thank you to President Donald Trump and the entire Trump administration for their relentless efforts to bring Omri and the other hostages home. From the start, you made our cause your mission, stood with the families, and never give up. I call on the international community to keep pressure on Hamas. We will not stop our as family until all the remaining 24 hostages are home.
Heartfelt gratitude to President Donald Trump.
Because of you, I'm alive. Thanks to you, I'm standing here today, and thanks to you, my little brother is finally home.
Now for this discussion, we are joined by Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for joining us again. Yossi, how did President Trump's warning and the ongoing violence in Gaza reflect the challenges of implementing the peace process phase 1?
Well, there are so many challenges in implementing this peace plan that we are expecting a lot of hurdles and obstacles on the way. But determination to move forward can overcome some of these obstacles and find a way to overcome others. The immediate obstacles are obvious. One is the difficulty Hamas has in returning the bodies of the deceased hostages. We have been receiving until now 7 bodies of hostages, and 1 body that nobody knows what is this body all about, and probably the wrong body. And we are facing the refusal of Hamas to disarm. And yes, what's happening right now when they execute their opponents in the Gaza Strip is one reflection of their intention to stay in power and to exert their power over the Gaza Strip for a long time. And I think President Trump has referred to that yesterday, as you showed a minute ago. And so did Prime Minister Netanyahu. We are not going to accept it. And if necessary, this is going to change by force. And this means resuming the military operations. Nobody wants it, but if Hamas insists on that, this might mean that. In the meanwhile, before going to military operation, we still have the tool of opening or not opening the Rafah crossing and allowing more or less aid to flow in an attempt to convince Hamas to disarm. But it's not going to be easy. Much depends also on the pressure put on Hamas by Turkey and Qatar, its both allies, to disarm. And I understand why Hamas doesn't want it, because they realize that, and this is the big issue here in the Middle East these days. They realize that if they disarm, it means that the 7th of October was a mistake. And they wouldn't like to admit that the 7th of October attack, the massacre of 7th of October was a mistake. Although everybody realizes that this is the case, even.
And Yossi, now can you also tell us are all bodies returned from Gaza?
Insist on staying in power.
Yeah. Yossi, is everybody back from the hostages? Are they back from Gaza to Tel Aviv?
All the living hostages are back. Their conditions are being checked by the doctors now, by the medical teams, but they are functioning, and grosso modo, I would say that they are in reasonable shape concerning the expectations of what's going to happen. All of them are walking, all of them are speaking. It's a relatively better situation than what we envisaged might happen. But still, many of them have gone through terrible torture and experienced terrible conditions while they were in captivity. And we hope that all of them will resume normal life soon.
And Yossi, what role do you think international organizations like United Nations, Red Cross should play in providing humanitarian assistance to Gaza and also those in Israel to cooperate with these organizations?
No, this is frustrating because because these international organizations did nothing throughout those 2 years in order to make sure that the hostages are given reasonable conditions while in captivity. It's the only function they had was to deliver them from the hands of Hamas to Israel. That was the only function of the Red Cross in this situation. This is really frustrating. Right now, we have the Red Cross and the UN organizations involved in shipping in the humanitarian aid for the Gazans living in the Gaza Strip. This role is problematic because many of them cooperate with Hamas And we see that Hamas keeps taking over some of the shipments of humanitarian aid that come into the Gaza Strip. We hope this is a temporary situation until Hamas really is disarmed. But God knows how long this is going to take, considering the refusal of Hamas to do that.
And how significant is or was the role of public opinion and political pressure from Israel when making decisions about sanctions, aid, and opening border crossings with Gaza?
Well, I think it had limited impact. What made things move forward was the decision of Israel to launch the military operation in Gaza City. When Hamas realized that Israel is about to take over the Gaza City and remove it from power by force, this is when Hamas was ready to accept the plan presented by President Trump that goes in line with Israel's demands that all the hostages will be returned, that Israel will maintain some security control over Gaza, and that Gaza would not be a base for terror attacks in the future and would not be run by Hamas. These are the demands of Israel, and they were accepted by Hamas because of the military pressure first and foremost. On top of that, the international community pressure, especially when it was led by President Trump and supported by Hamas allies, Turkey and Qatar, convinced Hamas to accept the plan, and that enabled us to bring the war to an end, hopefully. We'll see whether Hamas really delivers. But if they do, this is going to be the end of the war. And this is what made the difference here. From President Trump's point of view, I think the international pressure and the growing isolation of Israel was maybe playing a role, but as he was trying to leverage that against Prime Minister Netanyahu. But I'm not sure that from an Israeli point, I don't think this played a major role, except for through the messages of President Trump.
Thank you, Yossi.
From Hamas' point of view, I think the international developments were hardening their position, made it more difficult to reach an end to the war because they were under the impression that they managed to take the international community and use it as a leverage against Israel. So why show any flexibility? Only the Israeli military operation forced them to show this flexibility that was expected.
Right. Thank you very much, Yossi, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now, we stay on this topic. The Israeli government has reportedly decided to cancel the Gaza sanctions planned for today. The sanctions were set to include limiting humanitarian aid and keeping the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt shut. The cancellation of sanctions has been announced after Hamas has handed the remains of 4 out of the 28 deceased hostages, expediting the return process. Meanwhile, according to Israeli state media, Israel is now set to reopen Gaza's Rafah crossing for humanitarian aid to reach the Palestinian territory. Additionally, 600 trucks of aid are set to be dispatched to the Gaza Strip by the United Nations. Now, for this discussion, we go back to Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for staying with us. Yossi, is there any role that GHF will play for distributing aid, or it's now up to UN and other international organizations to distribute aid?
I think the role of GHF is going to be very limited in the future because, according to the agreement, if this is going to be implemented on the ground, and the responsibility for distributing the aid is going to be in the hands of UN agencies. And so we don't need the GHF. I think we should keep them as an option if something goes wrong with the distribution by the UN. So there's going to be a possibility to resume the activities of GHF. But right now, it's not necessary.
Thank you, Yossi, for sharing that insight and staying with us throughout this topic. Now we move on and we stay in the Middle East. Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa will meet